Radio Out There, and this is Barry Eaton. A very appropriate introductory track this week. It's called The Wondrous Universe. And we are heading out to the Wondrous Universe. We're not going to jump on a rocket ship or something like that. We're going out with my guest, Garnet Schulhauser. Now, Garnet was a guest on the program a couple of months back, beginning of April. Actually, it was a talk that he gave to Wendy Zamet's group, one of their groups, and it was such a good talk, I wanted to play the whole lot. And I did. But then it was so good that I thought, I've got to get back and talk to this guy. So I arranged to have a chat with Garnet. We're going to be talking about his amazing experiences as a retired corporate lawyer when all of a sudden a big transformation happened in his life. Want to find out more? Okay, hang around. Listen to Radio Out There. Garnet, hello, welcome to Radio Out There, and here you are in beautiful Canada.
Well, hi Barry, thanks for inviting me on the show, and yes, I'm calling from beautiful Victoria, British Columbia on Canada's west coast.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to be on your show.
One of my partner Anne and my favourite spots, the lovely Vancouver Island. Now, we are going to be talking about your latest book, Dancing with Angels in Heaven. Now, I put your talk up on the program 6 or 7 weeks ago, and so people will have had an introduction to you. But let's go through a couple of things there, because it's fairly unusual for somebody with your background, a corporate background in law particularly, to undergo such a radical change. Can you sort of encapsulate that a bit for us again?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, I was a corporate lawyer. I actually ended up practicing for about 34 years. And like a typical corporate lawyer, I was a straight-laced, stuffed shirt lawyer, arrogant, condescending, not really caring too much about other people, and busy chasing money and material goods. I mean, that was my background until I met my spirit guide, Albert. Do you want me to go into how I met Albert?
Yeah, just a quick summary, because Albert's very interesting. He's not a normal sort of a guide that only comes to you through thought or meditation. So tell us the story.
Yeah, sure. I was still practicing law, strolling down the street one sunny afternoon, when all of a sudden a homeless man just jumped out in front of me. It just came out of nowhere, stopped me in my tracks, and he looked like a typical homeless man with stringy hair and scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. But I didn't go around him because his gaze was sending me what I would call this rush of pure unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace, security, and well-being. I have never felt as wonderful in my life as when I was standing there in front of him and he was looking at me. So anyway, I was like a deer caught in the headlights, and then he broke the spell by saying, "Why are you here?" And he disappeared into a nearby store. I went in the store to find him, but he was nowhere to be seen. I went out in the street to see if I could spot him, but he had disappeared into thin air. So next day I went back to the same street, same time of day, hoping to spot him, and after a while I finally saw him sitting all alone on a bench. And I went up to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" He said, "Well, I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And so my initial reaction was I probably thought that this guy was like just a homeless man. How's he going to help me? But in any event, my intuition was screaming at me to sit down and talk to this guy, because what did I have to lose? A half an hour of my day. So I sat down and I spoke to him. And he said his name was Albert, and he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise. And at the time, I didn't even know I had spirit guides, so this was quite new to me. But I sat down and had a chat with him. We carried on with a dialogue that went off and on for like the next several months. And he answered all the big questions in life, like who am I, why am I here, what's my life purpose, and what happens to me when I die. And he answered all those questions very truthfully. They rang true to my heart. I knew that he was telling the truth. And early on, he told me that, guess what? I'm not just telling you this to satisfy your curiosity, because I want you to write a book about what I reveal so everyone could have access to it. So I was a bit surprised. I'd never even dreamed of writing a book. But anyway, our dialogue carried on, and he manifested in the physical form for the first 3 times. And after that, he was just a voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy. So anyway, the dialogue went on, and then when I finished that, he said, "Now you really have to get to work to write the manuscript for your first book," which was Dancing on a Stamp. And I was reluctant at first, but he was very persuasive. So I wrote the manuscript, and then I hesitated before I published it, thinking, all my former law partners, and by this time I had retired from the law, and I thought my former law partners and clients are going to think I've gone crazy. So I hesitated, but then I thought, heck with it. If I lose some friends,
so what?
Let the chips fall where they may. Yeah, and so I published the book. I did lose some of those old friends, but I gained many more new ones. So it's an amazing transformation for me. Very positive experience all the way along, and I have no regrets whatsoever about going off on this new path with my spirit guide, Albert.
That's great. Did Albert ever explain to you sort of why he appeared to you, firstly in physical form, but also why at that time was it important for him to come to you in particular?
Well, he appeared in manifested in physical form the first 3 times, but he said I was the only one who could actually see him. And so if somebody had been walking by the bench that first day, they would have seen me sitting on the bench talking to myself because I was all alone because I couldn't see him. And he said the reason he manifested physically for me was because if he had just started talking to me as a voice in my head, I probably would have thought I was losing my mind. So he wanted to gradually introduce me into the conversation by showing up in physical form, and it worked. And why did he encounter me? Well, he said he and I had planned it all before I incarnated. It was part of my life plan, which I don't remember. And so we had agreed that he would show up in my life at this time. I didn't remember any of that. And the reason he picked me was he said that I had some previous experience in some other lives where I was a writer. So he thought that maybe I would be more adept at writing the books that he wanted me to write to get his message out. So that's why he picked me, and it was all prearranged. And then he just showed up as per the arrangement, and there it was.
And there you go.
Luckily for me, I didn't walk around and disappear, but I managed to sit down. And as soon as I started talking to him, I knew right away that this was meant to be.
No, fair enough. And then he took you off on a series of adventures, really, wasn't it? Out-of-body experiences into various realms and explaining things. Do you feel that this was also part of the life plan, that you had to go back again to these places to revisit them on the other side?
Oh yeah, it was all part of my life plan. When he came into my life to do the Astral trips, he never told me when he was coming or where we were going, but he had his agenda, and so he was basically, I assume, following what was in my life plan and what he intended to convey to humanity, and so I was just following along. I was one of his messengers. I mean, like you're a messenger for the spirits. Lots of people are. He has many messengers. I'm just one of them, so I was quite happy to fill that role.
So what was it like when you started having these adventures? How did they happen? How did you feel?
Well, it happened when just unexpectedly I was sound asleep in my bed, and something made me wake up. I sat up in bed, and I could see this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And when he moved closer to my bed, I could see, well, it was my spirit guide, Albert, but now he was in astral form. And so when I said, what brings you here, Albert, he said, well, I'm coming to take you on a series of astral trips, out-of-body experiences, because I want you to write about what you see and hear in your next books. And then he said, by the way, you're not finished with one book, you got to write 3 or 4 more, which kind of surprised me. But then I had learned not to argue with him. So then he literally just reached out and grabbed my astral hand and pulled my astral body out of my physical body. And I turned around and looked, and my physical body was still sound asleep in bed. And so then he just said, come with me, and we just rose up through the ceiling. And when you're in astral form, walls and ceilings are no barriers.
Disappear,
through them.
Yeah.
And so then he took me to first trip was to the spirit side, and it was really quite an amazing experience. And that was my very first stop. And then after that, he took me on many other trips, always the same way. He never told me when he's coming, where we're going. But he always had an agenda in mind, and he wanted me to write about what I saw.
Yeah, so
and I did.
When you woke up the next morning, did you have clear memory of these visits?
Absolutely, they're crystal clear, like way clearer than any of the dreams I've ever had. Because when I have a bit of a dream that sort of disappears in 2 hours, these did not. But I'd wake up in the morning, and then I'd go to the computer and I'd bang out notes about what I'd seen and heard and so on. Those notes formed the basis for my later manuscripts, but I did clearly remember them, and that was by design. He made sure that I could remember them, and if I had any memory lapses when I was writing the manuscripts, I could just ask him, okay, I don't quite remember all the details, and he'd fill me in. So it was really quite a cooperative effort.
Yeah, it's funny. I had the same experience. I had a master guide working with me purely on my books, and that help came in many different ways, being led in the right direction, information flowing, dreams, experiences, the keyboard making its own impression on the computer, all sorts of things. But and then being told that basically, you are one of many messengers, which is the same message that I got. It seems that people on the other side of the spirit world really want us to know that there is nothing to fear, but death is just a stage of our overall journey. It's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, that's the message they're clearly trying to convey to humans, and that's why there's so many messengers like you and me through my books. But one of the other things, the message was clear that I got from the spirit side, from the Council of Wise Ones, was that they really want to help humans on Earth at this stage, because they think we're at a crucial crossroads, because we've developed advanced technology, but our emotional and spiritual intelligence has not kept pace. So they said, you guys have weapons, you can destroy all life on our planet if it's misused. We don't want that to happen. They want us to sort of progress up the spiritual ladder and become a harmonious and peace-loving civilization where we don't have wars and conflicts and terrorist acts and all the other stuff that goes on in our world. So they also wanted to help us in that way. But their view was, of course, that if people have stopped being afraid of death and what's going to happen, that will help them have a happier, more fulfilled journey, and then they can focus on things like, okay, how do we make our civilization better?
Yeah, wouldn't that be good if people could do that rather than submit to the fear that's been sweeping the planet in the last couple of years particularly? Let's go back to the life planning bit, because I always found that very not only acceptable but totally logical that we plan our life in association with our guides and helpers on the other side. But I've talked to quite a few people about this, and they find they reject it basically. Oh, come on, you can't plan everything like that. That would mean we'd just be puppets dancing on a string. But of course, there's a lot more to it, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the life plan just sets out the basic parameters for when you enter life. So that it's your name, the place you're born, your first language, identity of your parents and siblings and so on. You can't change that. You can fix that. When you're born, you can't change that. But once you're born, you don't remember what's in your life plan, and you have free will to take actions and make decisions. And that's why our lives are not etched in stone. I mean, we try to follow, our life plan as best we can, even though we don't remember it. But things can change, and we always go off course, sometimes very badly, sometimes many times during our lifetime. So it's not a predetermined thing at all. We predetermine certain things, but then the rest is kind of left to, hopefully we will hit all the points, but if our free will takes us off on a different course, there's nothing we can do about it. So it's very much not predetermined.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because what would be the point of coming here with a pre-written script? All you'd be then is a human automaton. So we obviously have to learn, because that's what we're here for. If we can't make mistakes and make our own decisions, then what the hell's the point of being here?
No, exactly. And then we do come here to learn and experience things. We come here to face challenges and learn lessons. Before we incarnate, we hope we can tick all the boxes in our life plan, but most of us don't tick them all because of our free will and our forgetfulness about what we came here for. Now, we do get some guidance from our spirit guides during our journeys here about what we should do. So when you come to a fork in the road, our spirit guides are sending us messages saying, take the left fork or the right fork, whichever one best suits our life plan. The trouble is most of us don't hear those messages, or if we hear them, we don't know where they're coming from.
And we don't listen.
That's the real challenge. Yeah, we don't listen.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
And our human minds often have their own agenda, which doesn't necessarily jive with the agenda of our souls. And so there's this constant conflict. But we still learn something from every life, and no matter how far off course you go, the good news is that you can never become lost or end up somewhere where you shouldn't, because everyone always goes back to the spirit side no matter what you did. So if you missed all the boxes on your life plan, you can come back as many times as you want, which is good news for some people. Other people have said to me, well, there's no way I'm coming back to this hellhole. Forget it.
That's well, you mentioned the H word. I did before as well, deliberately, because there is no such place as hell, and that's what I've been told, and I'm pretty sure you had the same message.
Absolutely. That was one of the first things that when Albert was describing sort of the cycle of reincarnation, he said, there's no, in the afterlife, there's no punishment, there's no judgment, there is no hell, there's no devil. Those are just fictions created by various religions, and for the purpose of instilling fear in the masses to get them to come to church every Sunday and follow the rules. And Albert said, it's nonsense, there's no hell, and everyone, even the bad guys, even serial killers go back to the spirit side, which really offends a lot of people, Barry, because they think, well, where's the justice in that? I mean, bad people should have to suffer in the afterlife. Well, Albert said that's just a human perspective. Everyone goes back to the spirit side where they regroup, and when they have their life review, they'll obviously see all the bad things they did, and then they can sort of, from that, learn from that experience and then try to do better in their next life. So life on Earth is just really a learning experience.
Yeah, look, a lot of people would sort of find that a bit difficult to swallow. Oh, come on, there has to be some kind of, not so much punishment, but at least recognition. From what I understand also, and I've been told, is that there are many levels in the afterlife. It's not just one great, big, huge, happy farmland out there. That, you do go back to where your soul has advanced to. And if your soul has dragged itself right down in a very negative way, then you're going to go into an area where you can be helped. Not punished, but helped.
Yeah, there is help for sure. And one of the things is that in the life review, you'll be there with your spirit guides who will be sort of going through the review of your life, and they'll be trying to tell you that, well, here's where you went off course, here's where you did good, and try to learn from what you did wrong, and we'll help you sort of prepare your next life plan so you can go back and try to do better where you failed in the most recent life. So you do get a lot of help, and people who are really suffered a very damaging, tragic death, like say they were murdered or tortured and then murdered, whatever. Some of those souls need to go into what Albert calls a reentry hospital, where they are cocooned for a while, where they can sort of other souls can help them sort of get back into the stream of things and realize that they're back on the spirit side. They're no longer on Earth, and they have to forget those things except for the wisdom they gained. And so there's lots of help over there, depending on what you did on Earth. But there is no punishment, and help is way better than being punished, in my view.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, well, I in my first book I wrote called Afterlife, I was taken on a journey similar to some of the journeys you've been taken on, but I relived my experience when I was killed in France in 1916 in the World War I, and followed my journey from there, which basically almost went straight into a healing centre because of the trauma of war. So I can totally relate to what you're talking about there, but everybody's going to be different, and that's the thing, isn't it, that we've all got a unique story to tell. It's not just sort of like some great big civil public service over there where you line up, take a number and head off in a direction everybody else is. We're all unique individuals.
Absolutely. We're all unique because we've all had different journeys, and no one has the same journey, and we've all had different lives. I mean, we've had different lives on planet Earth, different lives on other planets, and so no one is the same. And so that's one of the things that Albert has always told me, is that when you're looking at a person, a human on Earth, that's dressed differently, has a different color of skin, or is doing something that you think is wrong, you shouldn't judge them because you don't know where they've been, what they've happened on their journey. Yeah. And so you have to sort of go with the flow and say, okay, well, that person has their own journey. They haven't been the same place as I have, but we have to let them, run out their own journeys. And you're right. Everyone's unique. No one is the same.
Yep, fair enough. Look, we've set the scene there. Why don't we take a quick break and then come back again and talk about some of your experiences with Albert when he took you OBE into the other side and all around the place, actually. Nice cosmic journey. You're listening to Radio Out There, and Garnet Schulhauser is my special guest this week. We'll be back shortly.
Born before the wind, also younger than the sun. Yeah, the bonnie boat was one as we sail into the mystic. Oh, I can now hear the sailors cry. smell the sea and feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly into the mystic. And where that foghorn blows, I will be coming home. Yeah, when the foghorn blows, I wanna hear it. I don't have to fear it, and I wanna rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. And magnificently we will fold into the mystic. That foghorn blows, you know I will be coming home. And when that foghorn whistle blows, I gotta hear it. I don't have to fear it, and I wanna rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. And together we will float into the mystic. Come on, girl.
Van Morrison, Into the Mystic, from his famous CD Moondance. You're listening to Radio Out There. Garnet Schulhauser continues his wonderful adventures now. We're going to go way out into the cosmos. Okay, Garnet, let's have a little talk about your experiences as Albert sort of dragged you around the universe, starting off with the universe, because you found out, and I think it was a very nice way, and you talk about it very, very early in the book, in fact, chapter 2 called Genesis, how the universe was created. We all sort of think there was a great big bang that came out of nowhere, and everything just sort of magically appeared. But you talk about source, which I do too, rather than God, but the source created everything. I think it was very neatly wrapped up there, very early in your book.
Yeah, the source just decided was initially a singularity of energy, decided to just expand and fill the void, and so that what some scientists call the Big Bang, so created the universe, which was expanding. But the neat thing that I found out from Albert was that the source basically programmed the universe to divide at random times, so divide into two. Like a human cell, mitosis. And so the first universe divided into two, then those at some different times divided further. So there's a number of parallel universes, and this division is still going on. And if the division happened, like to us right here now, Barry, we wouldn't know it. But all of a sudden, in a parallel universe, there would be another Barry and another Garnet carrying on and doing things which aren't necessarily the same as what we would do. So it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it is, and I've been exploring this lately on my program with another colleague who works in the whole area of quantum consciousness, and we talk about this. And he's taken me in regression to a parallel worlds and whatever, and it's a fascinating experience. So I can relate to what you're saying here. We've got to realize that we are not the be-all and end-all, as so many people seem to think. Oh, no, there's no life on other planets. They're just nice little lights up in the sky to keep us amused at night.
Yeah, no, and I hear that from a lot of people, but Albert clearly opened my eyes to the fact that there is life on all the different planets, and that there are many different parallel universes, and so it's almost endless. And one of the interesting things that Albert took me on was, and as you may have noticed from my books, is that I got to visit a couple of different parallel universes where Earth was in a relatively similar state but had some major differences. So it was really unique to see that how things, little quirks in the history of a planet, could change things dramatically as you move forward in time.
Yeah, look, tell me a bit more about that, because I read that and I found that quite fascinating. I haven't had that experience. So Earth in a different universe, slightly different. What were your experiences there?
Well, I went to two different ones. In the one that's in Book 5, it was a parallel universe which was quite similar to our Earth, and he took me to hover over Los Angeles. And the first thing I noticed was that there wasn't much pollution. And LA, as you know, usually has a lot of smog and so on.
That's for sure.
Much pollution, and I couldn't see many vehicles on the streets. And so I said to Albert, what's going on? He said, well, that universe, they had a pandemic, but it was earlier than our pandemic. And one of the things they noticed during the lockdowns, as we did here on our Earth, was that there was a lot less pollution. People weren't driving as much or flying or burning fossil fuels, so there was a lot less pollution. So when the pandemic was over, the people there decided, well, we have to try to find a way to reduce fossil fuels because it's so much nicer living in a clearer atmosphere. And so their scientists got to work, and they basically developed a teleportation device. They started off by teleporting a molecule of water, and then they managed to move up to different things, and eventually they could teleport, people, much like Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty kind of thing. And so what happened was they set up all these teleportation terminals all over the city and all over the world. And so if somebody wanted to travel from L.A. to New York, they didn't have to hop on a plane. They just go into this terminal, punch in the buttons, and they end up in New York. And the same thing with freight, so that there weren't a lot of trucks on the road carrying freight or trains. There weren't hardly any planes in the air. And so they had really reduced the fossil fuel burning. Their atmosphere was much clearer, and they had just a really lot nicer sort of a place to live, a lot better civilization. And so that was really encouraging because I thought to myself, well, if those guys can develop that, why can't we? And I think we have to sort of, it sounds almost magical. It was, but it was really there. And so Gene Roddenberry's teleportation came to life in this parallel universe.
Yeah, I think if I had a chance, I'd jump on a jet or whatever and try and go and live over there for a while, but get away from some of the madness that we've got going on our planet right now, in this dimension.
Yeah, exactly. No, there was one other parallel universe. I don't know if you want me to get into it or not, but just briefly. It was another parallel universe where he dropped me down in Lower Manhattan, New York, and I noticed that the World Trade Towers were still standing, and I said to him, well, what's going on? Is this the same year as we have? And he said, yes. And I said, well, why are they still standing? He said, because there were no Islamic militants in that world. And the reason for that was there was no Islam, because in a quirk of the history of that planet, Muhammad had died at an early age before he engendered Islam as a religion. So there was no Islam terrorists, there was no crusades, there was no conflicts in the Middle East. And so that's why the World Trade Towers were still standing. Then he took me up the island to Harlem, which, as you know, is a very black district in our world. We dropped down there, and there were no black or hardly any black people on the streets. And I said, well, how did this arise? And he said, well, another quirk in that planet's history was way back in the 1500s, England abolished slavery. And soon all the other European colonies or countries abolished slavery. So there was no slave trade from Africa to the Americas. And that's why, and so because of that, there was no Civil War, there was no Emancipation Proclamation, no Civil Rights Movement, and the number of African Americans living in the U.S. was like less than 1% compared to 13%. And so that was another minor quirk that seemed to change in a very drastic way the United States in particular. So it's really quite interesting.
Yeah, I can tune into the minds of some of our listeners at the moment thinking, why wasn't I born onto that Earth? Why couldn't I have a nice life like that?
Well, and you should say to them that maybe they do have a clone in that universe that they're not aware of. So,
that's a thought.
They probably, and in fact, anytime the universe divides and there's someone like you and I living in it, well, all of a sudden there's two of us and one in each universe, and we won't necessarily be carrying on in the same. I mean, initially they're all identical, but then they change over time as people interact and as energy and matter interacts. So that's how these things develop, and they change. And one of the interesting things I always thought was, if I have a clone in another universe, I'd like to see what that guy did when he came to major decision points, and if he chose a different fork in the road than I did, how would it turn out? Just as a matter of curiosity. I mean, when we get back to the spirit side, of course, we'll see all that. We can see whether we had a clone or how many clones we had, and not everyone's guaranteed a clone, but if you happen to be around when the universe subdivided, then you'd have a clone.
Yeah, so that's part of our life review. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before, but that's very, very logical, isn't it? There was also quite a bit of contact that you had in some of your sessions over there, and one of them was from Gaia and Mother Earth coming through, sort of saying how unhappy they are with what we're doing right now, which is pretty obvious, isn't it? And the fact that we really do have to wake up to ourselves.
Yeah, Gaia she had a very strong message. She said that she dearly loves all of her creatures on this planet, including humans, but was very upset about what humans are doing in terms of abusing other animals and polluting the planet. And she said that way back in the Stone Age days, I mean, we didn't really pollute much. We didn't have any technology, but it really escalated after the Industrial Revolution, and we now have great capability to pollute the atmosphere, the water, the soil, and so on. And she was very unhappy about that. She said, look, you guys have to change your ways, or it's going to end badly for you, not to mention it'll end badly for the other creatures on your planet. And so she was very upset, wanted me to take the message to other humans in my books about we have to change our ways, we have to stop polluting, we have to get our act together. And she said, lately there's been a lot of natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, tornadoes, and so on that are much more intense than they used to be. And she says that's a result of your pollution, and you guys, if you don't stop, it's going to get worse.
That's right, and the message was also that Mother Earth could create these climate things as a message to us.
Yes, she did say that she has the power to have Mother Earth can actually increase the number and intensity of these disasters. She has been doing this as a shot across our bow, a warning shot. And she says, I don't want to, disseminate humans. I don't want you guys to be destroyed, but I want you to wake up and realize you have to stop your ways. And if you don't, I'm going to keep on sending these to you until you get the message.
Yeah, fair enough. One of the other things I found fascinating in some of your many adventures was the fact of looking at ETs, off-world journeys, etc., and also you were taken to Area 51. Now, that must have been a fascinating experience. So you were going there in astral form, but that must have been a great experience.
Yeah, it was. It's one of the few times that Albert sort of conceded to my request to go someplace, because most of the time he would take me where he wanted to go.
You had three choices, didn't you? You were able to ask three questions, which I thought was rather interesting.
So Area 51, which is interesting, and I just saw a couple of the areas. It's a huge area. One of the places was I saw the little spacecraft that crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. I'm sure you've all heard of that.
Oh, yes.
And so I saw the spacecraft. It was still there in Area 51. I saw the bodies of two of the little humanoids that were piloting the craft, who died on impact. They were there in preservative liquids, and there had actually been three of them, but they totally dissected one of them. And Albert said, look, scientists in Area 51 had been trying to reverse engineer this craft, because it would be amazing if they could find out how to make it, but they hadn't been able to. They couldn't figure out what was the hull, what it was composed of, very hard material, and they couldn't figure out the avionics propulsion system for this little craft. I mean, they dearly love to, haven't cracked it yet, but you can imagine if the United States was able to figure that out, they'd be running these all over the world. So maybe,
that's the problem, isn't it?
It's a good way. Yeah, maybe that's a good way. They'd use them in war, and making war. So anyway, so that was one area, Area 51. The other area was quite fascinating. There was a room where there was several people sitting there with a sort of a headgear on. They were wired up to a computer, and what he said was that they were trying to get these people to be able to communicate with people on the spirit side. And then ultimately what they wanted to do was, if they set up this line of communication, they wanted to be able to recruit soldiers who would basically take their own lives or being killed deliberately by these people, go to the spirit side, and then communicate with the military back on Earth about what's going on in Russia and around the world. In other words, as a military tool.
That sounds pretty sick, doesn't
it? Albert says it hasn't worked because once these people go back to the spirit side, no matter what their mission was when they were on Earth, they just say, forget it. We're not cooperating. We're not doing that. We're going to help you wage war on other people. So the experiment had not worked, but they were still trying.
They were still trying. They don't give up, do they? There's so much warfare, and that's the whole thing that I think the message comes through from the other side frequently, that we've got to start getting rid of this division and hatred and everything like that. We've just had elections here, and some of the hatred that's come out has been quite stomach-turning, actually. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah.
But you also got quite a bit of good information about people from other worlds who are living among us and have been for, well, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years. And that's very interesting. It backs up a lot of other research that I know people have been doing lately, and we've talked about on this program.
Yeah, there are a number of ET races that are visiting and have been visiting Earth for centuries. But Albert says, do not worry. They're not malevolent. They actually are very benevolent. They're trying to help us. They're watching what we're doing. They try to help us in subtle ways, like with telepathic messages to people, inventors, and so on, to develop things to help us have a better life. And so they're very friendly. But one of the things they can't do, because of they're a member of the Galactic Federation, which is the body of very advanced races in our galaxy, and there's a prime directive there, again, not unlike the one in Star Trek, which says that they're not allowed to unduly interfere with inferior races, with their development.
No, but they can actually help guide us in many different ways, mentally, spiritually, and so on, but they can't actually physically come in and interfere.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They can help us, and they do, but they can't. They could use their technology to destroy all of our weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. They could do that, but they're not allowed to.
Although they have stopped some of the missiles in bases earlier on at one stage, and demonstrated how they can be turned off.
Yeah, I don't have any information on that. I don't doubt that, but that would just be sort of a demonstration as opposed to a wholesale interference with our civilization.
Yeah.
So they can't do that. However,
but that's on a matter of record, actually. So yeah.
And so they're sort of having to be a bit helpless in the sense of not being able to directly interfere, because it would be nice if they could just come in and put all the bad guys away and destroy our weapons, but they can't do that,
No, unfortunately.
So, but they do guide us. You're right. They guide us. They send us telepathic messages. They try to inspire us to live a better life and make life easier on Earth. But that's what they're limited to. So the good news is, Albert says, none of them are evil. They're not trying to do us any harm. I mean, he said, look, they have such advanced technology. If they wanted to enslave or destroy humans, they could have done so way long ago.
Of course they
could. So that's not their purpose.
Yeah. That's why all this fear, I think it comes from Hollywood movies and things like that. They're coming here to destroy us all and create wars and whatever. As you said, they could have done it long ago. So, I mean, that just does not make sense at all. But it's good to know that they are living among us as well. They do take on form that we would, I guess, recognize as human or whatever, maybe animals as well, who knows. But at least they're among us, and that's something that I think we need to accept.
Yeah, they are among us, and I actually met one with Albert. She's actually a blue alien, a humanoid, but she was blue. She had a perfect human disguise. It was basically because of their technology, they could replicate what a human would look like, so no one could tell who she was. But she was working in a medical hospital, and she was trying to work with humans to see if they could find some way of stifling our negative emotions that cause all the problems in the world. So she was working among humans. They didn't know she was an alien. She said there's a number of her kin, her race, that are doing the same thing across the planet, which I thought was very good, because it's nice to know they're among us and they're really trying their hardest to help us in whatever way they can. So, Good news.
Yeah, well, look, you've had a series of great adventures there. You've encapsulated them in your book, Dancing with Angels in Heaven, Tidings of Hope from the Spirit Realm, and we certainly do need a lot of hope, don't we? Garnet, it's been great talking to you, and there's a lot more information in your book there. I'm sure people will extrapolate what applies to them, what they need, and what they can relate to, and what will help them. So thank you for appearing on the program. There's a lot more we could talk about, but, well, you're in the third dimension, where it's all ruled by time, and time is a Guinness. So lovely to talk to you.
Well, thank you for inviting me on the show. It was delightful to talk to you, and I hope that you're maybe someday in the future we can do it again.
Yep, that's for sure. And Garnet Schulhauser's book, which is called Dancing with Angels in Heaven, is released by Ozark Mountain Publishing, and it's also available through his website, garnetschulhauser.com. I think he must be very much into dancing, because his other 4 books are called Dancing on a Stamp, that wouldn't be easy, Dancing Forever with Spirit, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, Dance of Eternal Rapture. So very much the big dance there. Anyway, good to talk to Garnet, and I'll see you next week, hopefully on Radio Out There. Have a great one.